Good evening. Hello, everybody. Hope you are well. Glad you joined us this evening. So welcome to the Property CEO support sessions. Some of you may be new. Some of you I can see have been here before, which is good. My name's Richie Clapson, for those that don't know, and I'm here with the other half of Property CEO, Mr. Ian Child. Yeah, look, he's giving us a quick salute. It's really good to have you here. So, I mean, exactly what are these quick 45-minute, although we do overrun maybe a little bit every now and then, support sessions when they're at home? Well, they're regular, quick sessions where we're going to try and inject a little bit of positivity, a little bit of motivation, maybe a little bit of fun into what's going on right now. Isn't that right, Mr. Child?
It certainly is. Now, it probably might be worth me explaining a little bit about what Property CEO is and why we're doing these sessions. We train people how to become property developers. That's kind of our day job. And most of the people we train are normally kind of new to development, and they're more likely than not looking to do kind of smaller projects, kind of six-figure type profits, rather than the kind of big tens of millions of pounds worth of deals that a lot of larger scale developers look for. But at the end of the day, we're also business people. We've lived through quite a few recessions, and I'm afraid to say we got the grey hairs to prove it. And I can share that during some of the more challenging recessions, quite a few of those grey hairs kind of headed for the hills. And in fact, for one of us, it was actually more of a stampede. So basically what I'm saying is that we have some experiences what businesses can do to get into a kind of great place ahead of an economic downturn. And we also know there's quite a lot of people out there and businesses that are kind of struggling right now. So we wanted to offer people some help and some ideas and how they can get through this very challenging period, as well as stressing kind of the importance of being upbeat and positive, because let's be honest, it's so easy to be rather glued to the news at the moment. But the reality is that it's the people that focus on positioning themselves for the future that are going to be getting the biggest, they're going to be being the biggest beneficiaries going forward. So although there's a lot of negative news around at the moment, there's also a lot of opportunities around the corner, aren't there, Richie?
I'm not even going to join in. I mean, you've just got a hair joke in straight away, and that's not necessary.
But I don't know what. Where was that?
But it's okay because some of our guests this evening, Jacqueline's already said, I see that Ian has changed his top rather than painting his wall.
Hey, I wasn't allowed to paint the wall. I wasn't allowed to change the top.
Anyway, look, guys, we're happy to take questions as we go through. So if you've got any questions other than the painting of Ian's wall in his cupboard there, then please let us know. Put them into the question box and we'll try and pick them up as we go through. And we've got a few questions that had come in previously, so we're going to pick them up and we're going to do one of Ian's top 10s. What's your top 10 on tonight, Ian?
I can't remember. No, I can remember. It's all about being ultra productive when we're working from home, because let's be honest, it can be a bit tricky.
Sold that, didn't you? Ultra productive. You really sold that tonight. I mean, everyone's going to log straight off when that point comes. Anyway, look, welcome a few of you. I see that Yvonne, Yoko, hello again. Simon's on, Roma, Ritesh, Richard, good evening. Neelam's on, Paddy, excellent. Karen, good stuff. Lubamore, Jacqueline also just mentioned. Jess, Jim, hello there, good evening to you. Andrew, two Andrews. So Andrew H, Andrew L, you'll know who you are. Thank you, good evening. Bob, Clive, etc. Few people still joining, so that's great stuff. Excellent. We've got a good crowd on tonight, so please, any questions in the chat box, let us know. I've got a question here that came in after the last session. Let me just see if he's on. Yeah, Richard's on. Richard EM, for those that may or may not know. So first of all, actually, yes, I just see a couple of people putting hands up. I ought to ask you, can you all hear and see us? If you can, put your hands up for us, please. I normally ask you that. Yes, you're all doing it. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Good stuff. That's fine. Stop. Don't put any more up. I put them all down. I bet someone put, look, Stephen's putting it up and down. Stephen, leave it. They're going down. That's it. And you someone would be difficult this evening. Okay, so the question we had in is I'm asking people on other business associates to look out for off-market sites at the moment. And there is success in securing those deals. What do you think is a reasonable incentive or reward for them finding and gathering good local information on sites? Even if one has not secured the site, or may not, or maybe the site has not been sourced yet, I can't understand that, it might be nice to offer a rewarding commission in your pitch, because your contact is more than likely to be aware of your margins as a developer, the fact they're high. So the question here is, what should you be offering as an incentive for people that are bringing you deals? And should you offer them an incentive even if they don't actually secure the deal? I think that's an interesting one. I wouldn't be offering anyone anything unless actually they bought me a deal that I proceeded on, because people could bring you all sorts of rubbish. I mean, Richard, I could probably send you about 10 deals tomorrow if it's okay. We could do £100 a deal if you want. It's not a lot of money, Richard. I'll tell you what, I'll do it for £99 if you're interested. So £99 a deal, and I'll send you 10 tomorrow. Ian, just under £500 each, mate. We're quids in for that. Okay. So, Ian, you get the not Ian, Richard. Sorry, Richard. You'll get the point here that you don't really want to be offering for stuff which isn't going to go anywhere, because that doesn't incentivize anyone to bring you anything with any real degree of certainty. What you really want to do is incentivize those that genuinely bring you a good deal that is off market. Many deal sources over the years I've seen, and often, you know, oh, you're a developer, I'm a deal sourcer, can I send you stuff? Yeah, of course you can. And they send you stuff through, and quite often it's on the market, you know, and how crazy is that? I can look at Rightmove, I can look at the agent sites, not a problem. So you generally want an off-market deal, genuine off-market deal, but really it's not going to get anything unless we proceed on it. That's the basis. And really, what's a deal sourcer doing? I mean, I think, as Richard said here, he's talking about lay people and other businesses to look out for off-market sites rather than a sourcer and a deal packager. So just as an aside, a decent deal packager should do what it says on a tin. He should package, or she should package a deal up and present that deal to you, you know, to show that it works, not just, oh, I've seen a bit of land or I found a building down the road. What Rich has done here is talking about, you know, lay people and coming at it from a completely different angle. That's good. I like that. But really, you know, it's offering them something if you proceed. What's that number? I mean, we often used to talk about 2% as a finder's fee if someone bought me something that was genuinely off market, and they genuinely had an in. So it depends. You know, what I'm not interested in is someone doing a drive-by, not that you're allowed to do that at the minute, of course, but someone doing a drive-by of a site and then saying, oh, I just spotted this. That's worth something, but that's certainly not worth 2%. I mean, that's a few £100. That's buy them a drink type of thing. So, you know, I might buy someone a drink for just pointing out something where I'm doing all the work. If someone actually presents me a bit of land and said, by the way, I found out my brother-in-law's sister's friend's auntie's uncle owns that, and I've got their mobile. I've made that up. I couldn't remember that sequence if they asked me again, but there's a connection there somewhere. But then they gave you a mobile and an email connection to go ahead and do that, and get straight in there. That's worth something. So I wouldn't be paying any more than 2%, 2% of the purchase, whatever that purchase deal was. I wouldn't be paying it until I purchased, and then you know, I might just be giving a drink if it was just really I've seen this and thought of you. Yes, Mr. Child.
I was just going to add to that, if I may, that one of the, I like the question, because it isn't just about trying to find deals from deal sources. Obviously, those guys are out there, and there are the good and the bad ones. You tend to find out quite quickly which. But actually, a lot of this is about just telling people what you do, and just putting the word out there amongst, frankly, everybody that that you're developing, that you're looking for opportunities, and by all means, you know, mention that if sites proceed and it comes to fruition, then there is a potential financial reward. But ultimately, as long as you're telling people and you're getting that message out there, you'd be quite surprised at the number of opportunities that can come your way. Because, you know, people are connected to property, even if they're not working in property, they know of property, they know of people that have property, and quite amazing how even just one connection beyond your immediate connections is quite a potential sea of opportunity out there. So just getting the word out can actually make quite a big difference. And who knows, you might even pick up stuff without actually having to pay for it.
But I think anything you do these days, anything you can do at the moment, getting out there. And I think what I like about what Richard's saying there for everyone here is that people know people, and they know people that's in distress at the moment from a commercial business perspective. And again, as we always say, don't capitalize on someone else's downfall. You know, these whole sessions are about, well, you know, we're just going to have this little bit of breakaway time where we're going to be super positive, energetic, and excited about the future. When we go out of this webinar, yeah, we know there's a lot of there's a lot of stuff going on in the world out there, which is tough, and a lot of us are affected personally. We're not knocking or belittling that, but this is all about positive and that. And so if you can find someone that if you could offer a deal to, that would get them out a bit of a jam in the coming months, that's a great place to be. A few others just joining us as we're talking. See Joe's on, which is great. Nice to see you, Joe. Julian, Dave's just joined us. Looks like Angela's joined us. A few coming on, so which is good. People still joining as we're here. Vaz is on. Vaz, I hope I pronounced that right. Quite a few people we don't know. Shola, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Right, this is the bit they'll all be waiting for. Now, give me a quick wave, but give me a quick hands up if you are really excited to listen to Ian's top 10 tonight. Oh, how disappointing. All the hands have gone up. Oh, how disappointing. Okay. Ian, do you want to take your top 10 away?
I could take my top 10. It's, do you think there's the remotest chance of getting through it without some sarcastic comment midway through, or have I got the floor for the entire duration? Oh, okay. Get in quick. Okay, as I said, today's session, I thought top 10 about being productive, in fact, ultra productive when working from home. I think, you know, we've been working from home, some of us have been working from home for a while, other people it's quite new, but let's be honest, in the current environment, home working is probably here to stay. Companies have been forced to adopt it. Employees have now adopted it as a result, and they're starting to get used to it, even if they didn't do it before. And who knows, could ultimately end up being quite a big boost for the environment as well. Now, I absolutely love home working because it cuts out a lot of wasted time, mainly the commute, which for many people can take, you know, a couple of hours out of their day. But it does have its challenges as well. Distractions from kind of family, other temptations that lie around the corner, the TV, sometimes the fridge, mentioning no names, and just around the home generally. And it's also particularly difficult if other people are at home as well. It's one thing thinking, oh, I'm going to have a nice day working from home. It's another thing if you're doing it what seems like permanently, and you've got a house full of people to contend with. So how do you become a kind of productivity god or goddess when you're working from home? So here are my top 10 tips. So number one, I think one of the biggest challenges that we all have with regards to productivity when we're working from home is when our home life kind of bleeds into our work time. So what we've got to do is to separate work life from the home life as much as possible. It's kind of a real psychological thing. You need to have basically a degree of separation between the two. So ideally, this means that you should have a separate work area in your home. So if you've got a home office, that's brilliant, that's perfect. But if you haven't got that, see if you can maybe hive off part of your house or flat or whatever and kind of create a workspace within it. It kind of goes back to that mantra that, you know, work is work. You never want them to mix. Don't kind of do your work in front of the TV on the sofa, because what's happening is you're kind of confusing your brain. You're blurring the lines between the two. You might have done that when in the days when we could go to work in an office and we might have a bit of work to do in an evening or at the weekend. But now we're in the environment that we're in, you really want to keep the two things completely separate. Otherwise, your life just becomes a complete mixture of work and home, and it doesn't really work. Tip number two is about keeping business hours. So just because you might not have a virtual meeting until 11 o'clock in the morning doesn't mean that you don't start work till then. So if your business hours are usually, you know, 9 to 5, whatever they are, then try and follow them as closely as you can. Try not to allow people to distract you during this time. If that's tricky, and I guess it is tricky for a lot of people at the moment who find themselves having to work from home and juggle family life, particularly if you've got young children. See if you can find some hour-long time slots when everybody's agreed that you're not being disturbed unless it's an emergency, and hopefully they can wait for an hour or so to see you. I'd also be treating weekends differently to weekdays. I mean, by all means, if you want to work at the weekend, that's great, but try and make the days different in some way by changing your routine. I suspect we're all probably feeling a bit that the days all tending to kind of blend into one, and it's not really helpful. So we need to kind of retain the comfort of having those kind of 2 days a week that are weekends and the 5 days that are work days. Now, talking of routines, basically you need to have one. because mentally we like our routines. They keep us sane. So you need to be starting and ending work at a set time. And that's quite easy to do normally. It can be easy to almost keep working and just keep going, but guess what? There's always going to be something else to do. So from a work perspective, try and keep to a set routine for all of your work days. I would also say try and create other routines that sit outside your working hours. So this is kind of personal time. So what have we got there? We've got exercise, we've got family time, meals, downtime, TV, etc. I mean, it sounds a bit dull trying to pigeonhole it into a routine, but actually it's reassuring for us. We kind of know where we're at with it, and it reduces our stress levels. Obviously, make sure whatever you're doing, have plenty of breaks, drink plenty of water. And I would never work kind of more than an hour at a time without getting up and kind of stretching your legs, having a cup of coffee outside, a change of scenery, whatever. Now, I mentioned something. Yep.
You said you never work for more than an hour without a coffee. I thought it was about 20 minutes for you.
I knew it. I just knew it was coming, didn't you? I put that in there. I thought, I wonder if he'll mention anything, and I wasn't wrong. Yeah, 20 minutes. To be fair, an hour without a coffee is a bit of a stretch, especially in the morning. I mentioned, I think probably a couple of sessions ago, this technique called the Pomodoro Technique, which is about how to become kind of ultra productive. Basically, what you do with that is create 25 minutes chunks of work followed by 5 minutes rest. And you kind of allocate a specific task or a subtask to that 25-minute session, and you got to complete it. You got to finish that task in that 25-minute session. Loads of resources online on it, so if you want to find out about it, you can go and get all the gory details, but it's not complicated. Now, you don't have to do this day in, day out, or indeed every hour. Just doing a few sessions here and there can make a massive difference. It kind of got the advantage of doing this is that, first of all, because you've got to do it in 25 minutes, you're forced to split a job into manageable chunks. So rather than tackle the whole job over a course of a day, you're just splitting it into little chunks that you're tackling. Makes it a lot easier to complete. And then you can focus for 25 minutes at a time really easily, generally without being disturbed, and your brain is kind of in the zone for 25 minutes. You're not able to do that for a whole day at a time. So again, you can be ultra productive. And of course, the other thing is that you're using deadlines to your advantage. Because you've only got 25 minutes and it's got to be done, you cut out all of the unnecessary work, all of the nice to haves, and you kind of just focus on what's necessary to get the task done. So as a result, you get it done more efficiently and quickly. That was tip number 4. Tip number 5 is actually another psychological one, which is dressing for work. Don't spend all day in your pajamas just because nobody will ever know. Dressing for work helps kind of put you in a work mode mentally, and you kind of want to make it as unconfusing as possible for your subconscious to understand when you should be working and when you shouldn't. It's not just a question of kind of looking, dressed when meeting other people or doing video conferences or whatever. You're actually getting dressed for yourself as well. So certainly it makes you look professional in front of the camera if you are not in your pajamas, but equally you feel like you're in work mode. Whereas if you're in your sloppy joes or your gym jams or whatever, then your mind's in a slightly different place. Number 6 is about exercise. So very essential in taking exercise for all sorts of reasons, fairly obviously. It does make you more effective, and apart from the fact that it can be hard work, there is nothing bad about it. It makes you fitter, makes you healthier, makes you happier, makes you less prone to illness, probably not a bad thing at the moment, and if you do get ill, it can help you recover more quickly. It also stimulates your brain, breaks up your day, just basically makes you more productive and keeps you sane. And I may well talk about some exercise tips a little later in a different session, but it is really important that we have that in our day at the moment. Number 7 is have a great, not good, but a great home office setup. So if you're conducting virtual meetings, and I would urge everybody to be very proactive about that, whilst the world is kind of reacting, you can be a leader here. You want to be holding those meetings like a pro. So in terms of your setup, be on top of your filing, keep your work environment ultra tidy, make sure that when you come to work each day in your home office, that it doesn't look like somebody's slept overnight in it. It needs to be, you want to be, it's bad for the soul to turn up and kind of be faced with a messy desk first thing in the morning. Another tip: make sure you have great internet, especially if we're doing these online sessions. Good tip there is to kind of just get a long Ethernet cable and hardwire it into the back of your router. Much better than relying on the Wi-Fi, unless you're in the middle of town and you've got kind of a top drawer kind of package. Out in the sticks, certainly where I am at the moment, it can be a bit variable, so don't take chances with it. And of course, the usual stuff of having like a decent chair, don't work in bed, have a keyboard that protects you from RSI, all that sort of stuff, and of course a big enough screen. We're going to be covering kind of the best work setup in another session, but having that space kind of set up perfectly for working really does help you. Number 8 is about emails. I hate emails. I've always hated them. They've always been horrible, and they can be a massive drain on your time. So the trick to them, as I've found out over the years, is basically to only look at emails twice a day. Once at 10 a.m., then at 3 p.m. And what does that mean? Well, basically, there's only 5 hours. If something comes up within 5 hours that somebody desperately needs to tell you about, they'll call you. So you're not going to be, you're not going to be in the lefty outy club. Nothing's going to happen that you should have found out about earlier. But you probably can remember when you come back from a holiday and you haven't seen emails for a while, you're faced with a flood of emails, and then you think it's going to take ages to go through those. And then bizarrely, you manage to whiz through them in about half an hour. And that's because you're doing it in a concentrated way. You're very quickly ignoring all of the spam, all of the stuff that doesn't need any work doing on it, and then you're just putting in to one side the stuff that you need to respond to. Much easier to do it in chunks, twice a day, than it is to actually try and do it piecemeal. The other thing that you should do is turn off all of your alerts, because again, what tends to happen, we see we've got an email, we're so curious, we can't help but take a look and see, oh, it's another email from Richie, what does he want? And then you think, all right, I better do that later, so I'll mark it as unread. I mean, so you end up reading every email twice, complete waste of time. So I would just get rid of all of the email alerts and just make sure you do it twice a day. Another tip actually is to use apps like Slack and Zoom, because those guys are pretty good at being able to communicate quite quickly and quite effectively, and actually a bit more personally. Things like Slack, you can treat almost like a bit of a texting service rather than emails. Emails are a bit more formal, take a little bit more time. And of course, video calls, much more effective than emails, and of course, more human, and we all need a bit of that in this day and age. Number 9 is all about eating frogs. Now, I don't know if any of you come across that famous Brian Tracy book, Eat That Frog. It's basically all about doing your most important or difficult task first each day, and then you kind of work through the list. What tends to happen to most people is that we kind of procrastinate a bit. So if we've got a tricky task, we tend to kind of defer it, start off with some easy ones, have another cup of coffee, ease ourselves into the day, and before we know it, it's 5 o'clock and we still haven't done it. Far better to get it out of the way early doors. Makes you happier because you don't have the thing hanging around over you kind of all day, and you have a sense of achievement because you've knocked it on the head. And another tip actually is to make sure that you kind of put together your to-do list for what you're going to do the following day the night before. Rather surprisingly, even though you're asleep, your brain does actually start working on its to-do list the next day. Totally weird, but that's all part of having this kind of supercomputer upstairs, the subconscious. It just basically starts working on stuff while you're asleep. So if you give it your task list to work on before you drop off, then it can actually help you when it comes to the following day, and you set about those tasks. Quite weird, but true. And then finally, number 10 is actually about deadlines. Give yourself a deadline for each task that you do, because we actually work better when we're working to deadlines. As I said before, when we go on holiday, it's weird. If we go on holiday, we get emails when we come back, but before we go, we have a million and one things to do. And yet, for some reason, we always ended up going on holiday. We've always ended up managing to do everything before we actually left on that final day. And the reality is, of course, work expands to fill the time. So the reason it happens that way is because it has to. You're not allowed to leave without having a home for each of the stuff that you've got. You've either done it, or somebody else is doing it, or it can be deferred. Well, guess what? If you do that every day instead of just when you go on holiday and you say, right, I'm leaving at 5 today, and that's it. That's the end of. We're not debating that. Then everything that you need to do by 5 o'clock, I tell you, will miraculously get done. We kind of start ditching all of the bits where we do the unnecessary work. We're trying to make stuff perfect. Don't make stuff perfect. If you're a perfectionist, it's far better to be less than perfect and get more stuff done. A lot of people can spend kind of 80% of their time working on the last 20% of a project. So don't fall into that trap. So there you go, 10 tips to try and help you be a little bit more productive as we enter this rather interesting phase where we're all kind of working at home, whether we like it or not. If you've got any other tips that you'd like to add to that, just fire them into the chat and we can share them with everybody. But for me, back to Richie in the studio.
Great stuff. Well, there you are, top 10. So your normal hours is you're sticking to your normal 10 to 3, are you?
10 to 3. Oh, well, I didn't realize we were on overtime.
Yeah. Well, not for you, it would be, wouldn't it? Welcome to a few other people joining us. I see people like Martin's joined us probably halfway through your top 10. So they probably got your top 5. So if you want Ian's top 10, you need to listen to the recording. Guys, we're here for you. So we've got a few questions coming in. But if you've got questions, please drop them in. If you don't ask any questions, we're not going to be able to answer them. But I'm sure you've got questions out there. I mean, if I was out there in your shoes, I'd have a ton of questions right now. So if anyone's got any questions they want to put in the chat box, we'll try and get through them. And if we don't get through them today, we'll go through them onto the next session as well. So please pop them in there. We've got some come in. If anyone wants to come online and actually ask us a question, just raise your hand and I'll see if we can come to you if we've got time. I'll note your name and we'll come to you if you want to come online, providing you've got a microphone, that is, and we can get you to ask your question live. Okay, a couple of questions here then. So let's have a look at this one. What are your thoughts on exiting any development deals to housing associations? Interesting. Okay. What about exiting to housing associations? Well, I think that's a good move. I think it's always a good move. It depends on what your business model is. I mean, you're never going to make as much profit because the housing associations are probably going to want to pay less than what you would on the open market for those properties. But you have got certainty. And that's the really interesting thing about the housing association type of model if you go down that route. Obviously, you're going to be building for them. You're not having 2 exits, but the reason we always talk about having a minimum of 2 exits, especially in times like this, and especially 4 times like this, is where things chop and change. You don't know what's going to happen. But of course, if you're going down the housing association route, then you have got security of exit. You don't need another exit unless that housing association suddenly disappears or goes bust or whatever. And normally that's quite unlikely. Then you've actually got that guaranteed exit. You can often do sub 20% profit on GDV and you'll still get it funded. And the reason you'll still get it funded there is because the lenders will be happy that you've got that guaranteed exit. They want the 20% because you might have overrun, you might have to be chipping your prices. You know, anyone who's dropping units into the market at the moment will be having to chip their prices to try and gain some interest, indeed, when you're allowed to view, although you're not at this stage. So from that perspective, that's what your profit margins are there for. So you can eat into those a little if one needs to. So if you've got a guaranteed exit with a housing association, if you're down somewhere between, I don't know, maybe it's 10 to 15%, hopefully closer to 15, that's probably quite bearable. You know, you've got contingency on your build cost in there, you've got certainty on your exit. You can sign that back-to-back deal. You've got to have it in writing because you're going to be building to their spec anyway. You're going to be delivering in a certain timescale because they'll be lining up tenants to come and have a look. Present that in the right fashion with the right paperwork to your broker. You'll get a deal funded at those sort of levels. So housing associations, I think, are really good. It's a really interesting model for a lot of people, but it doesn't make you overall as much money. So it depends what your risk profile is. I think, you know, if that's a slow and steady model, that's great. If you do a little bit of that and a little bit of something else, that's quite good. Mix it up a little. So, you know, I think all those things are good. I think for certain that, you know, there are some people who I know do a lot of housing association work, and they are actually in a comfortable position at the moment in terms of their exit. They're all on hold in terms of their sites, and they're going to have to soak up maybe a little bit of cost for delay. But actually, in terms of going forward, then they have got the opportunity to sell those when the time gets right to finish the construction. So housing associations, I really like. Okay, next question. Actually, this is a similar one here. Look, this is so I've been approached. I've been approaching housing associations and found that they are only interested in larger schemes over 50 units. Seem a general. I think the question is. Let me just see if that follow on. I'm guessing the question is, does that seem general? So this is from Clive, by the way. Clive, I say here, I think there are definitely housing associations that will take lesser units. I know people that are putting out about a dozen units to housing associations. They probably won't often take 3 or 4. You know, that number they probably won't, but a dozen they will. You can get a reasonable mix in there. Looking at the sort of units they want, they're probably, and this is not an area that I know inside and out, but more often than not, they're looking at family type homes. So you're probably looking at nice 2-bed, 3-bed properties. That's the sort of area, but maybe with a mix of a couple of flats. If you could get a little block of 4 flats on a scheme, and then maybe a little terrace of 2 beds and a couple of semi-detached 3s, that's probably a nice mix for a housing association. You don't need to build garages normally for them, but parking spaces. So, you know, your build costs are a little bit cheaper. You don't really need to be giving ranges on kitchens. You know, they can be quite basic in terms of what they are, sturdy, but quite basic units. So I think, Clive, you're definitely going to find housing associations out there that will take less than 50, because I know people that are doing it. Who they are and in your area, I know you don't operate in the same area as me. I don't know. You'll have to go and have a look, but just keep trying, keep exploring. You're definitely going to get out there and find some. Okay, Clive, hopefully that's answered that question. Should we go on to our next question? So look, Ritesh has put a question in. So Ritesh, good evening, Ritesh, to you. Given that there are a few different software programs out there to source for opportunities, what parameters would you use to narrow down the results? Okay, I'm just trying to understand that question. Make sure, Ritesh, we've got that question right in terms of understanding what it is you're asking there. Really, this is about you narrowing down what you want out of a project. Ian might want to chip in a minute on here, but we have a process that we teach our students, and it's through a spreadsheet called DCAS, which is Deal Criteria Assessment Sheet. And that basically, we bring in a whole series of parameters of what sort of sites you're looking for, what sort of areas, and so on. Ian, do you want to just perhaps just give an overview of how that works? Because I think this might help Ritesh in answering this question.
Yeah, sure. So I think in general, yeah, you've got to be focused on geographic area for one. Of course, you know, it's a big country in that respect, so you want to be narrowing in on some specific areas. You're also going to be looking what type of property you're going to be, or opportunity that you're going to be looking for, and kind of the size, scale, price range, etc. One of the key things that you need to be able to get to is kind of out of this place where you kind of think, well, a 1-bedroom flat costs, you know, the average price of a 1-bedroom flat in, I don't know, Reading is £150,000. Because the problem with that is that if you're putting in smaller units into a place in Reading, or for example, upscale flats into Reading, it's not going to be the average price. So what we've got to try and do is kind of work out what the average cost per square meter is for that, and that then helps us determine what is the likely value of our end units. I think ultimately, though, if you're talking about the kind of the software you're using, then there's different types of software. Obviously, it can range on the one hand from the internet portals, which are obviously the likes of Rightmove and so on, where you have parameters on there that you can set. Both Zoopla and Rightmove, you know, you're able to look for commercial properties as well, and industrial properties as well as residential ones. And then, of course, there are a range of other paid for software services and apps, ranging from some relatively inexpensive ones to some kind of Rolls-Royce type products. At the end of the day, again, what you're trying to do is to make sure that you're quite prescriptive in your own mind, as Richie says, about what it is that you're looking for. It's a challenge that we can get to a place, if we're not careful, where we are we're kind of thinking, well, anything that produces a profit, I'll look at. I can develop any particular type of property, and so I'm looking for any particular opportunity. Problem with that is that that doesn't endear you to agents, for example, who want you to kind of narrow down and rather than a kind of scattergun approach, but also doesn't really help you either. So you want to be reasonably focused in terms of what you're looking for. So if you're looking for projects that fit in a certain category, the certain type of building, then those are the parameters that you set for your search when you're looking or using some of those tools that are out there. But it's I think the other thing I would just add to that is that it kind of pays dividends, I think, to have a fairly broad approach when it comes to development. So your area might well be anywhere within, let's just say, an hour's drive of where you live. It could be less, could be more, but then you probably have either a specialism or a preference, either for a type of product, type of property that you might be looking for, type of project, or you might have a specialism in a certain area. So you might know your local town or village or the local environment very well, might have some great contacts there and some great relationships potential with potential owners and so on, but you still do stuff outside of that. Or it may be that you focus on doing, I don't know, converting industrial buildings, but then when an opportunity comes that is a commercial building, or maybe it's a new build opportunity, again, that doesn't necessarily preclude it because you've got the skills to do all of it. And if you find something that you don't like, that you don't want to do, but it's still a great opportunity, then you've always got that opportunity to pass it on to somebody else.
Just to add to this, Ritesh says he uses Nimbus, and the Nimbus Land Insight, there's a number of those products out there. I think what we're saying, Ritesh, is, or Ian's saying, what I'm saying here, it comes back more to what information you put in that of really what you want. What is it you're after? And one of the things that we always tell people, so I know there's some of our students on this evening, a lot of people that aren't our students, so some people that hopefully are here for the first time, which is great, and welcome on board, is we're always going to say to you is do something with permitted development rights or planning. That should be one of your leading parameters for your first projects. If you're a bit more experienced out there, and some of you may well be, I'm not sure, and you're looking for going up and scaling up and doing some bigger projects, fine. But actually, even then, why? Why do you need to give control to the planning officers? You don't need to. That can cause you real issues, particularly when we come out of this bit of a lockdown. Those planning officers will be even more overloaded. So as a parameter to start with, I'd have a strong preference on doing something that's with permitted developments. I'd have a really good planning consultant alongside me, make sure I was in bed with them, that I knew exactly what was going on with the latest regulations, should they change, and I've been talking about that on some of these recent sessions. And then I'd be looking out for those projects. So those would be some of my key parameters. The other parameters, of course, in terms of value. What are you able to raise? What money do you have? What funding sources do you think you're going to get alongside you? And where is your skill set? So if your skill sets are very new, keep with a relatively simple project. That's where you want to be at this stage. Keep something relatively simple. Hopefully that's answered that to you, Ritesh. Obviously, come back to us if it hasn't. Another question in here. It's great they're coming in tonight, which is good. Joe, this is from Joe. Sorry if I don't always read out the name. We're sort of buzzing around here. But anyway, submitted an offer on a property just before the lockdown happened. It was left on the table for the vendor to consider, but at the time, it wasn't compelling enough for a quick response. Agent has gone quiet, not surprising. Is it sensible to retract it as we watch the market, or leave it there? Well, you're definitely probably not going to offer the same number when we come out of this, whenever we come out of this. And of course, the whole point of all these support sessions is all of us sticking together, working together, and trying to understand when we are going to come out of this. That's the good thing. What I would say there, Joe, is keep in touch with the agent. Okay, the agent's gone quiet. Well, why is the agent gone quiet? Because they're at home. And unfortunately, a lot of people out there, and I'm sure a few of us have thought this, who went, oh, well, we've got a bit of a holiday. Let's have a bit of time off. Actually, yeah, I was on the phone talking to someone today, and I said, you should be working harder than ever at this moment in time if you want to get into development. If you are in development, and I know some of you are, or your early days, and I know some of you are, or you're thinking about it, and maybe some of you are, then this is the time you should be working harder than ever, because you've got this forced period of time available where the world has largely stopped. So you can catch up. You don't normally have that ability to do that. You've got all this time, as Ian talked about, this traveling time that you don't have to use. Put that into something. And there's a lot of people out there I've seen on social media. They're going to learn an instrument. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. Great. Well, that's fine, but come on, we're entrepreneurs. Let's do something else. So learn how to be a developer, learn how to do that, get yourself positioned for the upturn. So here, what I'd be looking at here is actually progressing these relationships with these agents. These agents are sat at home, Joe. That's probably where they are. They're sat there at home, and no one's contacting them. So you want to be the one that contacts them. You want to be the one that, as Ian said, have a face-to-face, have a Skype, have a go-to meeting as we use, or a Zoom, or whatever you want to use. Have a virtual coffee with them, and just have a discussion. Say, how's it going? Obviously, I put my offer in. Whew, obviously, it's there at the moment, but let's see where we go. I'm definitely interested in the building, but what money I can offer ultimately, I don't know. You don't want to just send in a cold email and say, oh, by the way, I retract my offer. It doesn't build anything. And what we're trying to do, we know this, all of us should know this, that any business, and property particularly, and anyone that's one of our students, we hammer this all the time. It's about building rapport. And you don't have to stop building rapport now just because we're here. We're building rapport. We're having a chat. If Ian was an agent sat next to me here and I'm having a chat with him, we've got the body language. We can see what's happening. I can see if he looks fed up. Ian, look fed up for a minute. Oh, that's his normal look. Oh, he is fed up. Unbelievable. But, I would see if he's not engaging in my conversation. I would see if he's getting a bit bored. I would see if he drops off to sleep or slurps his coffee, which he does about every 20 minutes. So, you should be contacting them, engaging with them, and actually building that relationship. You don't even have to retract the offer. They know that you're probably not going to offer the same number, but if you're definitely interested in the deal, keep that relationship going. Because what happened, Joe, is the minute things start to upturn and pick up, if you're not in there, the deal will have gone to someone else. I've fallen victim to that in relationships, where we had a relationship many years ago with a client in London, and we used to do all their development work with them. We used to do a load of projects for them and with them and so on. And actually, they went quiet for a bit. And it wasn't quite a world pandemic of what we had now, but there were some issues going on in the economy, and they went quiet for a bit. We naively assumed that the minute they picked back up, that we'd be back in with that same relationship doing everything. And we thought, they've gone a bit quiet for quite a while. We haven't contacted them. So we contacted them, and they said, oh, sorry, we've joint ventured with someone else. We didn't think you guys were interested anymore. What? Of course we are. Well, you didn't contact us. So you need to get in there, because someone else will contact that agent and be in there for you or before you. Okay, let's have a look. How are we going for time?
Can I just add to that, Rich, that I think that's a very good point about being proactive. So I think, Joe, definitely, even if your offer is, let's see where we are once things are settled down, is probably the message. But it's so true what Richie says there about the fact that we can assume that the fact that we haven't heard anything means, we can assume what we like, but what does it actually mean? They may well be thinking exactly the same thing. You don't know what's going on. Maybe they no longer work there. Maybe they're in furlough. Maybe they're in whatever is happening. But there can be very little bad that could come out of you making contact with them. And I would think whatever, it doesn't have to be property development. In fact, in whatever business that you're in, where it's been affected by, as we all have, about working from home and having businesses effectively not operating normally, then being the person that is proactive about reaching out to people, whether that's one-to-one, it could be people that are in your industry, competitors, customers, people that are within your team, people that you work with, people you'd like to work with. In this case, could be agents, but actually being the protagonist and also the person that's able to be proactive and positive. That is going to, I think, hold you in good stead down the line, because we're in this sort of spot at the moment where people haven't really got used to what the new normal is. The future's uncertain. They're not used to working from home. They've probably only been done it for a couple of weeks. And so you've got a great opportunity to be somebody that is actually leading the charge here. And, so many businesses, and properties no exception, are fundamentally based on personal relationships. Now is a great time to get out there and forge some.
And I think, if we think about agents, those sort of people, they're people. They are people. They're in a sales process. You don't go into that type of role unless you enjoy working with people. And I spoke to a couple of people over recent weeks who've been in retail, and they're reasonably, well, they were reasonably comfortable in retail, have some fairly senior positions in businesses and so on, and looking to move into property and so on. But you know, they said they found it really tough because they love interacting with people, and you know, they just can't do it. They're not seeing anyone, they're not talking to anyone, so it's tough. So I think people will like it. Joe says, thank you, absolutely, I'll get on it. Okay, Joe, well, that's fine. It's just got a bit of a telling off. Go out and do it tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow. Okay, a couple of other questions come in. If a property is in a conservation area, will this affect permitted development rights? Yes, potentially. That's from Pardeep. Yes, potentially, Pardeep, it will. You need to have a chat with your planning consultant. So certain conservation areas will be affected. Certain buildings, if they're listed, obviously, just to go on and extend that conversation, can be affected. You can have buildings which are just of architectural interest, and the council may put restrictions on those. So definitely conservation areas will potentially affect permitted development rights. Now, again, with all of this, none of you want to be a permitted development geek. You know, there are plenty of geeks out there. There are some really good planning consultants. I mean, I don't know, one of you guys out there, or one of you girls this evening might be a planning consultant. I don't know. But planning consultants generally are geeky, and I mean that in a really positive, complimentary sense, is that they actually love the detail. They're real detail people. They're very, very competent people that can get in, understand the detail, and they keep up to speed with what's going on. And normally they're quite inventive. The really good ones are inventive. They try to get round angles. They try to see things that would perhaps be a little bit different by putting permitted development rights together. So what I would say is build a relationship with a really good planning consultant, have them on board, and better fire these questions. So Pradeep, if you're looking at a particular scheme in a particular area, they better tell you very quickly that that would be of use. Just as an aside, if planning is of interest, if anyone would like us to get a planning consultant on board, we had Dan Stiles on board, a project manager, just gave us a couple of tips. Give us a quick hands up if you think that would be useful. If I can get a good planning consultant to just come on board, and we'll just ask them a few questions. Yeah, a few hands up. So we'll try and do that. Great stuff. Okay. Oh, actually, look at that. How coincidence. So Ritesh said, in due course, are you likely to invite other experts like you've done on your podcast? Pradeep says, thank you, Pradeep. Hopefully that's useful. Not to the extent that we would have done on the podcast. That's not how we're running these sessions. They're normally quite quick fire, quick in and out. We're trying to keep them to 45 minutes or just over. So we might just get them on just to have a quick chat, maybe just a quick contact, and then there's an opportunity there for you to make contact with them in due course. Conscious of time, and I want to just try and pick up one more question here if I can, from Jay. Jay has said, how do you guys stack deals from build cost point of view? Do you always look to get a QS or a bill of quantities in place from the outset when initially stacking deals prior to offer? No, we wouldn't, okay? Because you can't afford to do that, Jay, on every project. So what you need is a process where you can actually understand and learn how to put things together at a relatively high level. Take this as a big funnel. Everything comes in the top and it goes down the funnel. So at an early stage, you want to be working on pounds per square meter or square foot, whatever you want to use there as a scale. And you want to be putting that information into a spreadsheet, a fairly simplistic spreadsheet. I'm a simplistic person. The spreadsheet that we have with our students is relatively straightforward. It's just across 2 sheets, and it has the ability to put a pounds per square meter in at an early stage. How do you get that? Well, you want to be talking to a QS or a project manager in your area, in your location, for the sort of projects you're doing. Describe a little bit to them the sort of project that you're trying to pull together, the sort of quality of the project, the fit and the finish. They should be able to give you a pounds per square meter for that sort of area, for that sort of project. You should then, Jay, put this into your spreadsheet and have some initial numbers. Now, that's just picking on one number, but let's just assume you've got everything else in place. We can talk about that more on another time if we need to. But then you should, with that type of pounds per square foot per square meter price, be able to put an offer in. What I'd suggest you then do, once you've got an offer in, because quite often you won't get it. You know, you've got to offer on quite a few projects before you get a deal. But if it's accepted, then you want to do a bit of running around and sorting out and really making sure that your numbers are correct, because you don't want to keep pulling out. So you need a bit of confidence your pounds per square meter is in the right ballpark. But ordinarily, you have got plenty of time whilst you're actually going through the process and letting them know your solicitors, getting in contact, to then maybe pay a few pounds there for a QS to put some numbers together for you. Jay, hopefully that answers that one. Pradeep says thank you. Ritesh says great, thank you. It's 10:02, guys. I think we've just gone over. We want to always try and keep these to about 45 minutes. Particularly want to just finish on time this evening. I don't know if anyone's aware. I've seen it on social media. There is at 8 o'clock. There's a clap for Boris, I think, out there. I know we've been doing the every Thursday, and I don't know if anyone's out there been doing this, clapping outside your houses for the NHS. I was completely gobsmacked when we went out a couple of weeks ago that there was it was just all over the place, and I didn't think we were going to hear anything from our house, but yeah, everyone around the area was clapping. So I understand tonight there's a bit of a clap for Boris. Obviously, you know, from our perspective, whatever your political bent is, we all wish him well as an individual, and of course for the country it's really important that that hopefully he gets through this and he's back with us before too long. So want to make sure you guys can get away and go and have a little clap for Boris. We'll be doing it here. Ian outside his house, probably. I'm outside our office in our studio here. I'm still able to come here. So great, hopefully that's good. Jay says thank you. At 9 p.m. we're doing other signs for those that broke lockdown. Oh, interesting. So something on at 9 p.m. for those that broke lockdown. I'm not sure what that other signs is. So there's something there that Martin's just put in.
We'll have to wait till after 9 o'clock to show you. I think the watershed.
Yeah, great stuff. Guys, hopefully you found that interesting. Hopefully it was useful. Hopefully just that little bit of motivation, a little bit of positivity. Yvonne says thank you. Yvonne, thank you. Thanks for coming on. If you want to join our next support session, we're running on Saturday. I know it's a bank holiday weekend, but a little bit of break from the family. I mean, what else are you going to be doing on a Saturday morning for half an hour or 45 minutes? Not a lot.
You're going to have an Easter egg on display on Saturday?
You never know. It's a distinct possibility. It's a distinct possibility. So anyway, look, join us if you want, propertyCEO /webinars, and register for the next webinar. There'll be a link up very shortly for that. And also there'll be a recording of tonight's one out for you in due course. But other than that, you know, stay safe, be positive, and as we always say, just be helpful to other people. And we look forward to seeing you next time. So thanks, guys. Cheers, guys. Goodbye. Martin says thank you. Martin only joined partway through. So Martin, you've got to be on time next time.
You'll love the first one.
Jim says cheers. Cheers, Jim. Thanks. Jim has left and says cheers. Look at that. It's just popped in. Guys, thank you very much. Martin says probably with a smiling face. Maybe he'll be on time next time. Martin, that's great. Thank you. Nice one, says Andy. Good stuff. All right. See you, everyone. Enjoy your evening. Go outside and clap for Boris. See you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.